All right, this is kind of an interesting story. It's an education story from Hamilton, Ohio, Hamilton Schools. Superintendent Andrea Blevins has announced that they're going to reduce, I think it's around 150 positions. They have a $10 million, roughly $10 million shortfall in their budget, and they are, they're making cuts, and that's made the news as if it's some kind of gloomy condition. And a lot of that is because there's some property tax changes that's coming, the way that money is collected, and there's going to be less money available for some of these schools. And I warned everybody that that was going to become the case with the charter schools. As we get into education reform and you get into where the elimination of the Department of Education, a lot of the perception of the central administrative function of schools and education, what they do for society has come into question, dramatically come into question. And Hamilton City Schools is a little just north of the 275 loop in Cincinnati. It's in Butler County, where I've talked a lot about education issues, and this is just one of them that's coming. I talk about Lakota schools a lot, and they're going to go through the same kind of alignment. This addiction that the education system has had on government money. And obviously there's a lot of pressure for representatives when you elect people to be your representatives and work in the Senate. In the state of Ohio, for instance, we're looking to reduce our property taxes, the imposition, the amount of taxation we pay, because that's this model where you perpetually ask for more money has taken people to a place where they can't afford anything. And so when they have to make decisions on going out to dinner, take their family to go to pizza, or fill the tank up one more time during the course of a business week, when you're digging into their expendable income, well, the way taxation has, it was comfortable for years to just say, you know what, we like kids, drop our kids off at schools, and here's another levy increase, until they started getting the bill, until other factors came into it and they realized how much money was being put on the table. And in Ohio, that the trend is, aside from what's going to happen with the Trump administration, the trend is less taxation. And the Vivek Ramaswamy is going to run on a reduce the property tax burden. That's going to be a national thing. It's coming from the Trump administration. There's a lot of talk about tariffs and the amount of money that's generated from tariffs through other means of collecting revenue and then giving some of that back to people who are burdened through federal taxation. So the trend for the next 20 or 30 years is going to be a clawback on taxes, where the previous 30 years there was a lot of naive people who wanted to feel good about civilization. They threw money at things that sounded nice on voting records, and these schools got used to that. And then and as I've said all along, you could have a debate about how much a teacher's worth. And I've said at Lakota schools, you have way too many teachers making six figures. I mean, for the kind of job that it is, and I've been challenged to come and teach classes before, and I've offered myself, I'll teach 4 classes. I guarantee you I could teach multiple people, multiple subjects, and I would actually enjoy it. So I don't understand why teachers think they need to be paid so much money. You got to make a living and all that, but if you choose to do something like that, no one wants to pay for the legacy costs. No one wants to pay for the extra amount that a person with a master's degree makes or should make, in theory, in some sort of tiered society. We're talking about a merit-based culture, and if you're a good teacher and a market can support it, yeah, sure, you should make decent money. But most of them, through collective bargaining, aren't very good. Most of them are average at best. And most of them, a lot of them, are pretty lazy people. And they get into the teaching profession because you get summers off and get all the holidays and all the bank holidays. It's a government job. So for them, it's a good deal because it's not a hard, demanding job. You get long vacations and and when you can make, I think when I first started doing these 15 years ago, it was a shock to people that teachers were making $63,000 to $65,000 a year on average. That was extraordinary money. And that's not even considered extraordinary money anymore because of the rate of inflation and some of the escalated costs that have gone up. But that for a teacher to make that realm of money, 30% more or so than the average person out there, because it's a government job. And they believe that they could support that unionized collective bargaining structure because people were so willing to say yes to these tax levies. And in the case of this Hamilton one, of course, they're in the interview process as the media got a hold of the story, because it's a sign of the times. You're going to reduce 153 positions. And I'm looking at the article off here to the side. 153 positions to take a $9.6 million out of the budget, because they're that short. So obviously the next question is, well, why don't you go to the property taxpayers and have them vote you an increase? Well, that's the problem. Is Hamilton has a lot of the good businesses that are there. In order to lure more opportunities back in that zone, you can't have a lot of aggressive taxation. The more you tax, the more you push out businesses and you leave behind a bunch of the residences that aren't contributing directly to the bottom line that you need. If you don't have a lot of thriving business, you're just not going to have a good tax base. And if you have a lot of declined housing, which is the case because all the companies picked up and moved out of Hamilton years ago, then your tax base isn't going to be as robust. And even if you have a great tax base, you're still going to face the same problem. So in Hamilton, they're trying to reinvent the enterprise zone and make it better and bring in revenue. But with that comes a responsibility not to overtax all those new opportunities. So throwing endless amounts of tax money at these schools is off the table. And that's how it's going to be. And the State House is going to be looking at reducing the burden on property taxes because you want to inspire people to buy property. You can't be pushing people off their property to pay the taxes, and then to take people out of residential property and put it into commercial because nobody can afford the taxes anymore on that property. Only commercial interests. And then if you overtax them, they're going to move out of the state. So the irresponsibility after years of tax policy for public schools has caught up with them. And you see that here with this Hamilton case. And you're going to see it with Lakota and everybody, Mason, everybody's going to go through the same bit. People have been overtaxed. They can no longer afford the escalating pricing of housing every few years. And a lot of new homeowners can't get into the market. So therefore, you can't support the tax base anymore. And that's just problem one on all this restructuring of how public education is going to be funded. Because we ultimately have learned that the public education system does not give you what you're looking for. It doesn't give you good, robust education opportunities. It hasn't been teaching our kids to be the next Einsteins. If anything, it's been a progressive think tank that's taught kids to stray away from their parental guidance and to waste the first 15 years of their life as liberals, bouncing around like pinballs, getting hit by all the bumpers that there are out there to bounce them around and collect some whatever the society can collect off of them during their key income raising years as they're growing. Probably should be out there growing families and starting lives for themselves. Instead, they're staying at home, they're living with their parents too long, they have to have assistance because they can't afford the world around them. And that's the future of the tax base that these schools are going to fund themselves off of. It's just not going to work. And then when you add the competitive element to it, which is what's very much coming, it's coming from the Trump administration. It's going to be flowed down to the states. It's going to happen in Ohio. The flow down, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to create competitive models, but it's going to have to involve options where the money the state gives to the student is going to go to the student, not the zip code. So just having X amount of students in your schools isn't going to satisfy your budget anymore. So now if you have all these out of control collective bargaining agreements that these unions negotiated with these puppet school boards they've put in place, the money's not there. So if they run the management away, there's still no money. There's no money coming from the federal government. There's no money coming from the state government. All that is going to be curved back. And then you're going to even remove the ability to get money based on a zip code. And you're going to have to be a competitive school. You have to bring your prices down like every other business out there. And you're going to have to be better at your neighbors in order to get those students to want to come to your school. Because if you take away the busing, like a lot of these schools have done, they've limited public busing a lot. And if you take away where you go to someone's house and pick up their kid and drop them off for free babysitting service while the parents run around and do whatever, if that's what your business model is, it's a failing model. Because if you made them to extract more taxes out of them, you took away the busing, then they learn to live without it, and they're driving their kids to school anyway. A lot of parents are these days, a lot more than they used to. If they're doing that anyway, then they'll drive them to a neighboring school district if they can get a better product, cheaper cost. And that's the reality that they're only hinting at with this Hamilton case. And the crybaby discussions, and go on the media and saying, please, state reps, give us some free money. Don't take away the money. That's our budget. Well, you irresponsibly spent the money on incredibly high wages, on employees that you probably didn't need, and you got to learn to live with less employees, less money to work with, and you're gonna have to give a better product than you do now. And none of those things were what they're talking about. They're just saying, give us more money. The state's taking away our money, so someone's got to give us some more to cover our deficit. Well, the deficit was negotiated with these puppet school boards that had people on it that said yes to all the union stuff, and there was no management that really stood in the way, and they just gave raises and escalating wages to all these teachers. And the teacher said, well, I got a master's degree and whatever, and I've went to school and I'm worth this much. No, that's not a competitive model. That's something that was imposed by a union standard to get a better collective bargaining agreement. And it wasn't based on any kind of reality. And now you have these out of control costs. You have budget shortfalls because you have declining communities because these schools have impeded growth in communities, not helped them. And the end-all product ended up being far undervalued for what we want. And we didn't get what we wanted out of the education system. And we have several generations now of kids that have grown up into adults that have a lot of problems. And that's the future tax base. They're still living with their parents. They're not becoming taxpayers that are going to pay for all these escalating costs that all these legacy people left behind. And now you have to reset the entire clock. And that's what's going to happen. And public schools everywhere are going to have to get a line, and it's going to be a tough gig, but they mismanaged the product. They mismanaged the entire idea, and now they got to pay for it. And kids are still going to get educated. There's going to be charter schools that arise that offer options, but the old public school model where they pick your kid up, drop them off, and you have the kids gone to school for an 8 or 9 hour day, and you can do whatever you want or over for free. It's going to cost something, and it's time to restructure it. It's been time for a long time, and it's upon us now in 2026. And Hamilton is just the first to start complaining about it, but there's going to be many more to come. And you can't say that you weren't warned, because I certainly warned them. I warned everybody for decades now, and some listened, most didn't, and now you're going to have a rough life. So get used to it. It's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.